Hey everyone, it's George from
Okay.
Blockchain DXP, and I have Anish Mohammed with me, who I believe is one of the OGs, not just in the cryptocurrency space, but also in the cryptography space. And what I really liked in this particular podcast is, he shared his experience. He talked about what is going on with Tornado Cash at macro level, and also, why it's important to follow rules and regulation. When you listen to this podcast, you can clearly tell that, he has a passion for cryptography. He has a passion for getting things right, and I'm sure you can learn quite a lot of things. And he also is hosting an event every Saturdays at one of the most beautiful locations in Dubai called as Marine Plaza. So in the show notes below, you'll find all those details as well. So check this out, and please feel free to drop in any comments below as well. So good afternoon, Anish. Firstly, thank you so very much for doing this. Anish, can you tell our listeners a brief overview of what is going on with Tornado Cash? I mean, just for listeners who don't know what Tornado Cash is, do you want to explain to them what
Sure.
Tornado Cash is?
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you again very much for having me.
Uh-huh.
So, Tornado Cash is a mixer
Mhm.
in a loose sense of speaking, and it has a bunch of functionality. But the simplest way to describe is as a mixer. It uses the constructor called zero-knowledge proofs
Yep.
to do the mixing. The constructor zero-knowledge proof is something very simple. You try prove something to a third party without revealing the secret. So
Yep.
imagine I'm in this room has one door. I make a claim to you that I have the ability to get outside this room without using the door. So I'm the prover, you are the verifier. And if you and I, if we were to run this in an interactive manner, you and I go outside the room, you stand outside the room, you let me inside, you close the door behind me, and then at some point in time, you see me outside. What you know for sure is the fact that, I have the ability to escape from the room.
Yep.
What you don't know is how I do it. We
Mhm.
can do this as many times as we want, but the outcome will be the same. So you can actually use this to prove certain characteristics in a mixer. In this instance, it's like a particular coin has never been spent before. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't know which coin it is, but you know this never been spent before. Loose sense of speaking. This is pretty much how I describe. Tornado Cash initial version had four values: 0.1, 1, 10, and 100.
Mhm.
It had a relay mechanism to pay for the gas charges,
Yeah.
and the initial version was mostly supporting Ethereum.
Mhm.
And the team was, in that sense, reasonably public. They were known to people. They took in investments. So they also had a token that they used to give out for providing, good behavior for the
Yeah.
participants of the protocol. Yeah.
So essentially, the news broke out when the Treasury of Department actually tweeted about it, and what they mentioned was that roughly $7 billion has been used via Tornado Cash. Now, out of the $7 billion, I believe roughly $1.5 billion has been used for illicit purposes, right? Roughly
I
around that.
have to admit, yeah, I mean, I will be very honest
Okay.
and frank. I would not be offering any such comments on such
Okay.
things that touches on the regulators or something. I will answer all questions on
Uh-huh.
technology, all implications of what this means to technology. I can
Okay.
explain all the rest of it.
Mhm.
I don't want to be giving out any
The
kind of thing
numbers.
that sounds legal.
Yeah.
B, anything that could be seen or heard by regulators and they could take a view on me. I don't
Sounds
want to.
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Got
I'm
it. Yeah.
very, yeah. So it's like I have a protocol that does privacy. So I'm very much at the mercy of the regulators. I want
Yeah.
to be doing the right thing by the regulator. So, it never helps to actually make comments about what a regulator has done or not have done.
Sounds good.
So
Yeah.
that's my view.
So
Yeah.
from on the tornado perspective, I think you just touched upon that there were three pools that they have. I think it was 1 ETH, 10 ETH, and 100 ETH, right?
No, four.
Four of them.
Four
Okay.
pools. 0.1, 1, 10, and 100. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. So essentially, what would happen is that let's say a person would deposit, let's say zero point 0.1 ETH, they would get a receive and a note, and when they want to
Yeah.
withdraw that, they would get a different note, something
Yeah.
of that sort, isn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. Something of that sort. That the way to think about it is like then we
Mm-hmm.
go to the simplest way to think is when we go to the bank,
Mm-hmm.
we put our card in, get a bunch of you know cash out, like AEDs in that sense, right?
Yeah.
So the AEDs is not really marked in that sense. You can go around and spend. So
Correct.
but the problem in Ethereum is like every time you actually send a thing, everybody in their dog knows what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
For some purposes, it is not very helpful. what I mean by that is these are very legitimate purposes. Like, why do we have doors? Why do we have windows with just blinds on, right? Like, we don't want to live our lives in total, transparency, right?
Yeah,
That
absolutely
is something that society realized a very long while ago. That's why we don't live in communes. Like, you understand where it's going, right? Like, in the West, we talk about privacy, democracy, and democracy implies privacy, right? Like, if and only if you have the right to choose, then only, democracy makes sense, right? So this is like a continuum of things. And for some reason, we seem to kind of forget the fact that in crypto, we literally can't have that. And the funny thing is, in centralized finance, this happens all the time. Like, when I go to a bank, I do my KYC. Once I do my KYC, within the bounded amount of money, like, if I want to try, transfer $1 million, they go, oh, wait a minute, can you prove to me the source of funds now?
Yeah.
If I am putting in $10,000, they won't, right? If I pull out $10,000, they won't. Depends on which part of the world it is. So this is how this works. And this is how it should work in the crypto world as well. So when we talk about things that is even more sophisticated in the crypto world, let me explain what this means. So imagine you want to sell something in the crypto market. So when you want to sell something in the crypto market, there is this price discovery happening. So you come in and go, I want to sell my ad at $2,000. And you come in and say, I'm willing to buy 8,500. And like, you can have strategies. The moment you deploy a strategy on a blockchain, what happens is everybody sees it, right?
Yeah.
You could even have people watching a smart contract. You go to the graph and deploy a subgraph on your smart contract address, and then they know what you're doing. So essentially, your strategy will disappear in no time. The depth of the market will disappear in no time, right?
Correct, yeah.
So you, as a legitimate user who is actually putting in effort to understand the strategy, to keep your alpha, which is the gap between the normal market and your particular strategy, you have to be private. Yeah. And this is very valid. The existence of dark pools in traditional markets is well known. You can actually read the book, but I think it's Dan Robinson. Yeah. Right? And there's also a movie about it. So like, dark pools exist. And dark pools should exist in blockchain and DeFi.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? There should be, So the construct here is like, there are other things that can happen. Like, if you think about money, if I'm not mistaken, there was this one report that actually came out in the 90s or 2000s where they analyzed US dollar, right? Every secretion was there, and a bunch of drugs, traces of drugs were also there. So, the question is, well, we have actually seen a couple of reports come out. One, I think, was from Chain Analysis. There was one sponsored by Zcash and other people. There was some more, and a couple of other reports. Like, less than 0.5% of the total amount of crypto has any kind of relationship with, what we call,
illicit activity. And
illicit activity. And the funny thing is, this is very important. This is a very, very important thing. On chain, it's incredibly hard to hide any of these things, right?
Yep.
Off chain, it's so easy. The only way we track money is like, oh, what does this money have, right? So, compare, this is not apples to apples, it's apples to oranges. Yeah, apples to oranges, right? So even then, we are understanding, like, we have a dominant ecosystem and then the small ecosystem. And the small ecosystem can't do much. What I mean by that is the total volume we have in, the crypto ecosystem is like a 3 or 4 or 5 trillion in that sense, 2 to 3 maybe, right? It's nothing. It's a drop in the ocean. Absolutely. If you are a nation state and you want to do something, it doesn't help you, right? You can't run your GDP through crypto. No way, right?
So not all at least for now,
yeah. Not at least for now. If you run a CBDC, that's a separate thing. Like, you shouldn't actually mix the two together. You should actually keep the two separate. So, this is a, 2 different worlds that seems to coexist in the same time frame, in the same technology space. But, for some reason, this attention to privacy in crypto space have taken more effort from people than probably should have.
And, Anish, from your experience here, let's say when the Department of Treasury sanctions a software, what do you think does it mean? And how do you think the software developer across the different communities, especially the Ethereum community or even Monero community, How do you think they have reacted to this news?
Okay, so again, I can only say things that I've observed, and a lot of the things I haven't had a chance to, talk to them.
Yeah.
So I happen to be in the same segment of people who actually build privacy protocols. So I've already spoken to people who are investors in the space. I've spoken to founders or co-founders of well-known crypto protocols, which I shall not name. They all are waiting. The advice I've been given is wait and see. Don't do anything. And this is what I say to everybody. There is very limited information that's out there that you could actually go for. So you should actually be cautious. Don't do anything that actually cause you harm. Don't say anything that will cause upset to anybody. So I apply that to myself. So as of now, most people, they're concerned. So one of the team members of Tornado Cash, Alexis, has been arrested in Netherlands. The charges has not been brought forward. So that is the thing that we are all waiting to see. If when the charges come out, we would have a better idea of what is it for. So in a larger scheme of things, this is the kind of anomaly in the sense. So let me walk you through what I see as a Tornado Cash situation. The Tornado Cash situation is the following. The first is that the addresses that have been published and that have been banned or added to the SDN is the Ethereum addresses, okay, some Gitcoin addresses. However, these things haven't happened. BSC, addresses are open. The Tron addresses are open. The token that actually the protocol uses is open, right? So that opens up a different set of questions, which is are you allowed to do what you want to do in other places? I don't know. Hey, look, I can't comment on that, right?
Yeah.
So it definitely doesn't seem wise. That will be my immediate thing. If you're a Bayesian and you see, okay, one part of this protocol has been banned and now interacting with other part of the protocol might not be the best thing to do. So the other part of it is there is a very interesting aspect that most people don't seem to understand fully. So let me walk this backwards. Everybody talks about Web3. Everybody talks about Web3 in such a way where they go, oh, Web3. You recognize all of Web3 is out of Web2.
Exactly.
Hey, you missed that bit, okay?
Yeah.
You absolutely need all the underlying transfer protocols. Hello, you missed that bit. So now the problem is if you ban anything on Web3 and the ban is enforced, oh, hell yeah, now we have a small problem. The Web2 service provider has to comply. And this could be service providers like Amazon Web Services. So let's walk this through. So imagine there's a protocol that actually had a normal DeFi protocol. Now, unfortunately for them, they actually interact with one of the addresses that's been sanctioned. And as it so happens, oh, yeah, that's been supported by Infura. Oh, as it supposes, Infura is on AWS. Oh, hello, AWS. Now we have a problem. Yes, we have a problem, right? This problem is not being well understood. And there's the other side of this problem. The other side of the problem is imagine Ethereum. Ethereum now has a slide problem, right? If you think about the proof of work versus proof of stake, proof of work is mostly outside of US, right? Proof of stake is a lot concentrated inside US. Now, the question then happens, how are these guys going to comply by this thing, right? So that I see this as a duality of consensus was going to happen. A set of nodes would actually have a node that actually doesn't involve filtering out of path, and some set of nodes that actually have an implementation of it. So consensus is not the same consensus in that sense. So this is a partition of the world into a decentralization gets broken up into, in one strange sense, influenced by regulation and not influenced by regulation. And the two consensus sets are very different. So here you go. A decentralization has way more, impact on decentralization will be way more than most people really think.
Yep. And Anish, just touching on your point that you mentioned about AWS, I'm not sure if you've seen the news about some trolls. What they've been doing is using Tornado Cash. They've been sending it to celebrities.
Yeah, look, there's a difference, right? I'm so sorry, I don't remember your name. It's
George.
George. George, okay.
Yeah.
So, imagine you're George from Kerala, right?
Yeah.
There are so many Georges in Kerala, right? If you're a George from Kerala, you accidentally happen to have a wallet. Some of these guys send you one of this state. You are effing done, right? You're effing done, right? In a sense, like they go, yeah, okay, in India, you have, all the problems, right? Like they are going to really come after you, right? The same thing, if you're a brown-skinned man like me with a surname Mohammed, they send one shit to me, I am done.
Yeah.
I'll have to go through so many hoops. So, the world is very different for different people. If you're a white-skinned man, or
Yep.
male white-skinned guy who has a profile public, or, in that sense, whatever that is,
Correct. Yeah.
you could think of all the different shapes and sizes of people, sexes, or orientation. But in general, the majority of these people fall into that bucket.
Yep.
They have a pretty easy way of getting out of it. If you or I get in, we will have a much difficult time. We will have to prove that that's not us, and OFAC wouldn't look upon us as kindly because, why should they?
Yep. Absolutely,
Right?
totally agree. In fact, and I just wanted to ask you about an article that you wrote in the newsletter, rather, via Substack, and it talks about a link to decentralization. So, can you tell our listeners a bit more about that? Because I think you mentioned about the short-term impact, the long-term impact it will have on protocols and service providers as well.
Yeah. So this is kind of what I was describing. All right, just before. So immediate short-term impact is like the fear of the unknown, right?
Yep.
So, a lot of these people who are developers would be right now in the probability speaking shitting bricks, right?
Yep.
Literally shitting bricks. So, they're all really concerned. So again, going back to the Tornado Cash situation, the ban is not on the entity, not on the developer, not on the founders. So I don't know what it is happening. But, when one of the developers is picked up,
Yep.
the propagation is. So the thing that implies here is the following. One is any kind of privacy tech that's there is definitely being driven out of US and the West, right? It is actually going to the world where, I don't know what this is, but that's where this is going to happen, right? Like there is an arbitrage that's being set up. And unfortunately for the US, what they need to understand is like there is a game being played, right? US dollar system is on one side, and there are other systems on the other side. A bridge exists in one sense by crypto, right?
Yep.
It's not the truest sense, but low value things that bridge exists. So if an arbitrage is being created, the value leaks from one side to the next. On the long run, if crypto takes a bigger shape, this could be a very different scenario. It's actually might not be the best thing to do, right? Like, and similarly for development skills and development of people who have expertise in this topic. Tomorrow when they recognize if you are somebody who has enormous expertise in CKPs and you build things like this, you probably will have to choose where you want to be. I don't know if you know this, like what has actually happened is financial crypto is actually in one of the islands, right?
Yep.
The reason for that is exactly this. So, regulators seem to be very interested in. These are academics, right? Like this is financial crypto is one of the crypto conferences by the International Association of Cryptography Research, IACR. They're going to have an election soon. So I was joking about the election process, but irrespective of that, as a member, you get a note. So I was just joking, like, should create more sophisticated things. So they do like 4 conferences, if I'm not mistaken. CHES, Asia Crypto, and Financial Crypto, right? Okay. That's 4 conferences across the year.
Is that the
sometimes
one
they do a couple more.
Yeah. Is that the one with David Schaum has been involved in? Because I was listening to a podcast.
Yes. So, this is a funny thing. So what has happened is like now you're driving talent out, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing you need to really recognize is very, very importantly, is that expertise in cryptography is the basis of your security, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's something, this is something that, the second order effects of everything is very important. Like, you do things in the first order, and the second or the third order is the thing that really, really gets you if you don't really think through things. So it's like, if you think about, okay, I just don't, in some sense, I don't know if you're from Kerala, not like in our mother tongue, we have this saying, right? Like, to get rid of the rat, you burn the house down, right? That's a proper one I'm saying about that, yeah. So, so that's essentially what this means, right? Like, literally, that could be the scenario. Like, you are looking very short-sighted, and you definitely solve the problem. By solving the problem, impact would be much larger and your downside could be much larger than what you really thought. So that's always a problem. So that's one possibility that can happen out of the Sonata Cash situation, where a lot of this talent. I mean, it could just be that the talent goes to other areas as well. Like,
Yep.
Let's think this through. Loose sense of speaking. People who are exceptionally smart. I mean, I would say, total number of people in the world who could actually do like hardcore zero knowledge research is probably a couple of hundred, maybe less than 500 people globally, right? So out of that, say there's a small fraction that exists in the US, and this really bites. And when it bites, it happens. It happens in different ways. One is that the funding to. So if you look at zero knowledge space and the amount of actual research that has happened in the last, and the progress that has happened in the last, I would say 6 years, right, or 7 years, it's ridiculous. So 2013 to 2014 is the first time Pinocchio scheme was produced. Zcash was generated. 2015, 2016 is when it was released. 2017, Stark was brought out by Eli Ben-Sasson. The concept of L2s came in, and then a whole bunch of this Sonic, Plonk, all of them. This is a whole bunch of, so much money has gone in. And if you look at the Starkware's most recent raise, which is an 8 billion valuation, where so all of this has happened. That's because there is this technology that allows you to have a particular set of characteristics. Now, this particular set of characteristics is very much useful for privacy, right?
Yeah.
Now, if all of this is being not be possible to use, then what happens next? And what happens next is they all need to be displaced, and they all need to go find other things. And then this, talent that is probably the cream of, whatever that is, right?
Yep.
Has to do other things, and that's a wasted opportunity, both in many ways. So that's something. And as I was describing, then there's the protocol problem. The protocol problem, as I described, is like, decentralization as we see it would exist no more because of the things I said. Firstly, this things go up the food chain, right? Right. So, from Web 3, it goes up to Web 2, and Web 2 really pushes back, right?
Correct,
so what does it mean to Web 2? So it's like Web 2, would actually ask Web 3 people to sign up to contracts, right? Which is what they don't want to do. And, this is why I always say to people who actually talk about Web 3, always remember, Web 3 needs to have a bridge to Web 2.
Correct. Yep.
You exist in Web 2. And what happens is it is both physical and virtual in terms of value transfer and physical access into network, right? So a lot of the people who are like what I call maximalists completely misunderstand this. And the reason I say this is like, I come from the traditional finance world. So I did cryptography, I built micropayment systems. Then I went and worked in banks and insurances. I built a reinsurance hub in 2000. When I was involved in building tertiary insurance hub in 2005. Had a bunch of clients, including AIB, Zurich, and all those people when I was doing consulting. Then I worked in Lloyd's and HSBC. So I'm like, I've gone through the whole pipeline, right? I know what retail banking is like, really up close. So, I have, and I understand what fintech is, and I understand what payment systems are, and I've known this so well. So I don't have illusions of things, right? I understand what exactly happens. So when you come in and you just look at crypto and you go, oh yeah, and crypto for me, cryptography for me, I don't have any illusions either. I've been doing this for, in theory, at least 20 odd years, right? 22
That's a lot of time.
Hardcore. Yeah, that's a lot. So in that sense, to me, I don't have illusions about, cryptography magically solve this. No, I happen to be one of this, cypherpunks from the late 90s, right? So, I've seen all these things happen in front of me. So for me, one of these people who sit there and watch and say things about things and like, didn't I? I thought so, and I did say so. So, what the kind of thing, right? So this is the problem. Like, a lot of the people are not really looking at backwards. So you should look backwards, look at Clipperchip, and what happened to Clipperchip. Then, look probably at, what happened with PGP, right? The case between Phil Zimmerman and the US. Then look at, what happened when Applied Cryptography was published, and the 130 odd pages of source code that's at the back of the book was published on an FTP site, anonymous FTP site, right? All of this are right in front of me, right? I've been there and I watched it. on Clipper, no, but the rest of it, right? So I've seen how this unfurls and different places take different positions. And that is also one need to understand. Under recently, there was a very strong regulation on export of cryptography, Wassenaar Agreement.
Okay.
And so Wassenaar Agreement implied export of crypto is in the same class as export of munitions.
Which is
so that's awesome.
But because at
Yes.
the end of the day, it's just numbers and alphabets, isn't it? I mean, so
that's the thing. It's a funny thing is like until very recently, 40 bits would all be allowed to do. So if you go back and look at SSL version 1, I think is 40 bits. And the reason for that is this, if I'm not mistaken, you need to check the numbers. Definitely didn't support 128 bits, right? So this is what you need to understand. So like cryptography has been allowed slowly. The arbitrage is actually being like, we should be able to break this thing and nobody else should. But that's a silly thing to say, right? Like, nobody actually has, how could I say, a monopoly of mathematics, right?
Yep.
Nobody, right? Nobody actually has monopoly of a brain. Nobody actually has monopoly over languages.
Absolutely.
So, you can't prevent other people from thinking. So it's like, you can prevent, but it will happen, right? So if you go back and look at the evolution of RSA, Clifford Ellis and those guys from GCHQ, they had a scheme. They didn't say that to anybody. But if you look at Diffie-Hellman and DH, Diffie-Hellman's scheme, you will see a lot of similarities. You go, hey, so the same thing happens. So you might delay it by a month, 2 months, maybe 3 months, maybe a year or two, but things happen. So there you are.
And when I'm listening to you, I'm getting this theme because I just listened to this podcast of David Shom with the Bankless. And he was talking about the struggles, that he faced back in 1985 and some of the challenges, that the government were also posing. So absolutely correct.
So he got the sharp end of it, right? So what he did was he was involved in creating mixers.
Yeah.
So this is not a Chaumian mixer in that sense of speaking, but it's a mixer. I mean, Tornado Cache is a mixer, but it's not a Chaumian mixer. Chaumian mixer has some certain characteristics. And there are a shitload of mixers. And you know the irony? And now this is the irony for you. So there's a protocol called Tor, T-O-R.
Yep.
And you know who funded it? It's a different. Yes. I think it's Navy or DARPA who funded it, right? And it's actually used to help democracy.
Yep.
So, it's always the case that you have a bunch of tools. Like, you buy a knife. A knife is used for a lot of things, including other things, right?
Correct, yeah.
So, it can't be solved by ban. Yes, there are lots of countries who ban knives being sold.
Exactly.
But that's an extreme way of looking at things, right? Like risk management should be done in context of what the risk is. And I'm not saying, regulators have lots of things that we don't know, right? Like they have access to information you and I would never have, right? But I did write a piece 2019 in CNN that I kind of alluded to this. If you go back and read it, you can see the first paragraph, and I kind of say, one has to be very careful. That is very likely this is going to happen.
Yep.
And now it has happened. I can say, it's on CNN, so I can say, I did say so. But it is a writing on the wall in the sense like it was quite clear to me at least that it will trip this thing and it will actually, but the implications of doing that is not straightforward. That's literally what I would say. Like nobody really knows where we will end up.
And a couple of questions I wanted to ask Anish is, will there be implications to, let's say, non-crypto related products as well? So let's say when you talk about privacy, Bitfinex, which manages Tether, they have launched, a video sharing platform, which is completely peer-to-peer. Now, could it be possible that that can be used for illicit purposes? And will there be a sanction for those protocols as well?
Yeah, so let me walk this backwards and probably explain certain things to you. So remember my previous statement about decentralization won't be the same after this, right? So what has happened is like protocols that has any ability where somebody has the ability to change and filter, they will be forced to do so. So if you look at USDC and USDT, it's a stable currency, right? And they have the ability to ban and blacklist. They already used to do blacklisting. They will continue to do so. This is literally what's going to happen. So, protocols that have the ability to do so will be forced to do so. So I don't know. Like, what can you do? It's a reality.
Now, my question is, let's say for the underlying protocol itself. So let's say there is a peer-to-peer platform which just allows communication, like, XX network. I'm not sure if you've heard of XX network. That is something,
No, I haven't. No,
which
apologies.
is a new protocol by David Shom. So it offers, 100% privacy. So is it possible that, let's say the government finds out that this particular protocol has been used by, let's say, terrorist organization or by hackers? And could it be possible that they might go ahead and sanction the users and that particular protocol as well? So XX Network is one and Key.io is one because of the Stornado cache situation.
I think Key.io is something I've come across before. The Tornado cache situation is like it's worrying for any privacy preserving protocol, right? Like they have to think twice. Like even if this is the worrying bit. Even if you're completely decentralized, if there is a possibility that they see you having anything to do with it, they will come after you. So when you write a protocol, the protocol doesn't really say what kind of communication you can have, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it's like a knife, right? Like a knife can cut vegetables, can cut meat.
Yep.
Yeah. So live meat or dead meat, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have a sensor and it says, this meat is live. I can't cut it. No. So this is the same problem with protocols. So somehow I get a feel that this could be an interesting situation where, a lot of the protocols might get into a lot of trouble. My expectation is that the trouble will be slightly different. The trouble would be something along the lines of the Web2 service providers that provide them with the infrastructure will pull off.
Yeah.
That is typically what has actually happened in the past as well. So it's like if you go back and look at the case against, apply cryptography and things like that, a lot of FTP servers just dump the stuff out because they don't want to take risk. And a bunch of them then continue to, outside of the US, continue to support them. And then that resulted in where we are right now. Like we have so much cryptographic libraries available. It has to start somewhere. So I don't know, it is a question that I don't think I have an answer to.
Yeah. And, just an example which I'd like to share is back in 2016, there was also Monero. So, cryptocurrency exchanges in Dubai, they used to offer, this option for users to buy, sell, and trade. But all of a sudden, we got a notification that, we can't use Monero anymore. So without any explanation, so it is possible that, you might be getting similar options for cryptocurrency and maybe for protocols as well. And that's about all. And is there anything else, Anish, you'd like to tell our listeners about Tornado Cash or anything that they want to take out from the session? And
I honestly don't know. The thing that I have to say is whatever we think or whatever we do, as a citizen, we always are under the rule of the law, and we should always try comply by it, because that's very important. Because if everybody decides we really don't want to decide, and we only pick the ones that really works for us, then a largest fraction of the population will have something against each of the laws that are there, and then there'll be a total disaster that's going to happen. At the same time, most laws, I'm saying in general, there are mechanisms to actually challenge them, and either it happens in the court of law or in some other mechanism. So all of these avenues are open, and if there is a question where the question is it's not very clear to you, I think one should either go talk to a qualified lawyer who could give you a proper legal view before you open your mouth to do something.
Yeah.
Because it's as I said, upfront, I'm not a lawyer. I would not talk about anything legal. I completely stay in the bound of technology, implications of technology. No politics, none of this stuff. So my take is you need to really understand what you're in for. It would be a fool's errand to try be brave, right?
Yeah.
You could probably find a lot of people who are very brave and are paid for it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a complete tragedy of commons, but in general, you need to understand what you're doing before you cross that line.
Yeah. And the example I can think of is, Virgil Griffith.
I was about to mention the name, but he's in so much trouble. Right? So
And
it's probably never worth taking the risk. It's like a risk-benefit analysis. So, there's this construct in thinking called mental models, which is like you look at things and you decide what you want to do. And you could think of this as a multi-criteria decision-making model, and then
yep,
you can think of what the outcomes are. And then look, if there's a situation where there is some solution that you can get away with, you should go for it. And if
absolutely.
you think this is a complete and utter disaster, walk away now. So walk away now. So
That is definitely the brilliant advice here. Perfect. And Anisha, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it. Is there any way the listeners can get in touch with you? Is there any YouTube channel or any social
oh,
media that you'd
yeah,
like to share with them, or crypto with
I
coffee as
have
well?
to. Yeah, so they are very welcome to join Crypto with Coffee, the Telegram group. They're very welcome if you're in Dubai to come attend. I try my level best when I'm in Dubai to be there and talk nonsense to everybody. I do have a Substack, which is not very active.
Yep.
I am active on Twitter. You can find me at Anish Mohammed, and on Twitter, it's my full name. Then, in general, getting hold of me, if you want, you can send me messages on Twitter.
Yep.
If you really, really have something that you probably don't want to send it to me on Twitter, you can find me on Telegram. It's zero knowledge, one word,
Yep.
as the handle could be. So, you reach out to me, I'll try my level best. Again, full disclosure, I am no longer I don't have an academic position these days. I still have an adjunct faculty position, but I'm not an active researcher. So my time I spend on research is very small amounts, and I don't act and behave like a researcher as such. I mean, I have a team of 6 people who are researchers who work with me, and we work on problems. We try to publish things. We help other community to improve the knowledge. But at the same time, I don't have the kind of bandwidth I would love to have to give like very long, nuanced answers. Expect like one liner. Do this, go read
Yep.
this. That's the level of I want to set the expectation. I'm very happy to help. I think it's very important that people understand what they're doing and they understand implications of what's going on there. At the same time, it should not be a burden of 1 or 2 people to explain to everybody that what is happening. So I am happy to point people at other people as well, so who are probably better adapted to communicating. I wouldn't
Yep.
say I'm that adapted to communicating and have all the social skills to explain things to people.
No, I totally disagree. I think you do have the right social skills. I mean, if you follow him on Telegram, he often replies in a very polite and very courteous way, considering the fact that, you're an OG in cryptography, and I definitely think you're very approachable. So what I'll do is, I'll mention in the show notes, about the Crypto
Sure.
with Coffee, which is coming up this Saturday. And I think that would definitely
Yeah.
be interesting. I think we're going to be talking about Ethereum merge, and we'll be talking quite a lot of other protocols as well. So
Yeah, there's one important thing I forgot. So
yeah.
In some sense, I talked about economics of private DeFi in HCC. That talk kind of talks about this economic implications, a lot of the things which I didn't talk about in this podcast. But in many ways, it kind of delves into the details of what it really means to have privacy and how expensive is it from a regulatory perspective and from a protocol perspective to have privacy. And the larger construct of why privacy is important for society and the economic value of privacy. So that is there. So it's
Absolutely.
the title of the talk is called Economic Analysis of Private DeFi. It's my talk from HCC. And also, I wrote a paper like now, probably 12 years ago.
Mhm.
It's called The New Secrets. It kind of describes this, what I would call information arbitrage and structures of powers in society. So it's like, I generally explain this construct. So, which is like, imagine you are in a civilization where there's enough of language, but they haven't really done astronomy. So you have been watching the moon and you realize on the 29th day it goes black. You go on the top of the hill and you go, oh, moon god, please there be black now. And the moon disappears. And everybody down thinks, holy fuck, this guy really talked to the moon god. And he's the god. Now, whatever he says happens, right? This is information arbitrage, this trivial information arbitrage. This is what happens in society, and society is governed by this. So, it might be interesting for some people to understand this. Like, I've been having So I'm a philosopher's hat. I've published a couple of papers in philosophy and been invited by UNESCO to speak at the World Philosophy Night to describe, especially progressing and stuff like that. And I've been as you said, a cryptographer, researcher, security. Now I've been a blockchain person in that sense. So for me, I see this as multiple hats on, and I see it as multi-layered, multifaceted view of things.
Excellent. And one thing which I noticed is, whenever you talk about cryptography, there's a different passion which comes out, which I think is absolutely excellent. And, which even when I was listening to a couple of other cryptographers, there's something different, something which you absolutely like. And one final question, Anish, nothing to do with cryptography,
Sure.
Nothing to do with blockchain.
Huge.
What is your favorite genre of music and why?
Oh, I am afraid I don't have that much. But when I get a chance, there's two sets. I don't know if you know this thing called ghazals.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. The Indian ghazals, absolutely brilliant, yeah.
Yes. Some of them, but Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and people like him.
He's a legend, yeah, absolutely.
He's awesome.
Legend.
He's awesome. Yeah. So sometimes I listen to that. Sometimes I listen to instrumental. So depends on if I'm doing something which is light and it doesn't require full brain, then I will listen to.
If you ever get time, there's Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan with Eddie Vedder from a heavy metal band called Pearl Jam. You definitely need to check it out. So it's a mixture of classic ghazal with heavy metal and absolutely brilliant.
I think it was in one of the movies. I forgot.
Correct. Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, with Susan Sarandon.
It's a soundtrack for a movie.
Soundtrack for that one. Yeah, absolutely correct.
Yeah. I remember that one.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Anish. Really appreciate you doing this, and I'll definitely send you the video for this format as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anish.
Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Bye.